There's a quite well-known and traditionally, regularly, frequently done Buddhist ceremony that is a taking refuge in the Triple Gem, a taking refuge in Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Sadhana gamanang in Pali, going for refuge. And the way it's usually done, it's immediately combined with a commitment to the precepts. So usually when taking refuge, one also recites the 5 training steps. That is a literal translation for Sikkhapadang. Precept is actually not quite precise. No, it's a training step in our training for liberation. But I think often the power of that apparently simple ritual is underestimated. I think many are not aware how profound it is to take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Anxiety is extremely common. There's so many people who suffer from anxiety. I believe it is the most common mental disorder, being afraid, being anxious, angst. Have you ever tried using the act of taking refuge in the Triple Gem for countering anxiety? The Buddha recommended to recollect him. He recommended to recollect the Dhamma. He recommended to recollect the Sangha whenever we are overcome by fear, by anxiety. And of course, taking refuge is a very powerful act of recollecting Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Not just recollecting, but declaring publicly even and committing oneself internally to Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. The one feature of the Buddha Dhamma is that it's always open for investigation. So if I'm sitting here and I'm saying, if you have anxiety, give it a try, taking refuge, or taking refuge helps, you don't have to believe that. Similar, if the Buddha recommends that bringing to mind Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha can overcome fear and anxiety, it's not something we just have to believe. That is quite easy to try out. Here we are offering that ceremony every Saturday morning. 7:30, admittedly a bit early for the weekend. But we also offer it on the Sundays closest to the full moon normally. Sundays closest to the full moon, that's additionally to the Saturdays, every Saturday. But then Sunday closest to the full moon at 9 o'clock, which is a little bit easier than 7:30, still early for a Sunday. We're not usually doing it just with a meal. And the reason is I don't want to make that a kind of hollow ritual. Because if people come to just offer some dana, meet friends, share some food at the monastery, that is what we call dana, generosity, giving, kindness. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are ready to take refuge and commit themselves to the 5 precepts, isn't it? It's much easier to come to the monastery and bring some food and offer some things to the Sangha than making a commitment to Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha and making a commitment to really work hard to train with the 5 training steps. And if people come here now, just before the blessing, I start doing the 5 precepts and the refuge, they probably feel all obliged to join in. Because it would look a little bit odd if you don't join in. And then you end up with many people joining in although they have no real intention of keeping the precepts, and although they may not have much an understanding or real genuine commitment to the triple gem. And then it becomes just like a procedure, admitting to the precepts, by making that just a kind of automatic, ritualized procedure which one does whether one is really intending it or not. So for these occasions when people come Sundays closest to the full moon at 9 a.m. or every Saturday 7:30, they're obviously coming specially for that. And we are usually offering both to choose whether you want to do triple refuge with 5 precepts or whether you want to do. I'm mentioning that, so this opportunity is there. Now just go for it and try it out. That's the hallmark of the Buddha Dhamma. It's all open for investigation. Sometimes people ask, is Buddhism a religion? Is it our sciences, whether it's physics, chemistry, engineering, computer science, is only concerned with coarse material phenomena? But the Buddha Dhamma is primarily a science of the mind, how the mind works, and how the mind can be made to work, so to speak, perfectly, and how the mind can be completely purified of any corruptions and impurities, and how the mind can be completely released from all fetters, from all restrictions, to experience unlimited freedom inside and the end of all suffering. In a very scientific way, because the hallmark of science is that it can be verified. And if some researcher thinks they have a miracle cure for cancer, it's not like that the other researchers will either believe or don't believe, but you have to publish that in ideally a reliable peer-reviewed journal, and then because it's all published, what kind of treatment you are giving the cancer patients, other researchers can try it out. And they give exactly the same kind of treatment regimen like the original discoverer, and then they may see the same results or not. If they see the same results, and their patients also recover from cancer with the same treatment, they still wouldn't believe that researcher, because now they know that he's right. It's not a matter of faith or belief. No, they have verified now in their own research that they have exactly the same results. It's the same with the Buddha's teaching. It's open for verification. You are invited to scrutinize it. It's not that you are told you just have to believe that. You can try it out. An easy one is dana, generosity. The Buddha said, generosity, good karma, is a synonym for happiness. You can believe that or you cannot believe it, or just try it out. What does it feel like to give something, to be generous? What does it feel like even to give some food to the horses? We have horses adjusted here. I really like it because adjustment means we allow them to eat the grass on our property. Now, the grass behind the fence here is still our property. Sometimes people think that the property ends at the fences, but in large properties like here, 85 acres, you may have fences within your property. And the neighbors is actually therapy horses. This neighbor, the next one there, Lake Manchester, they are working with, I think, troubled youth who have either mental problems or social and behavior problems. And apparently it can be very therapeutic interacting with horses. I find it very therapeutic. But I don't have any of the work. The horses are lots of work. But they have to do all of that. We allow them just to eat the grass. They have to look after the horses completely. It's their horses. But I can go there and feed them some carrots And it feels really nice. I don't have so much experience with feeding monks because I'm on the receiving end normally with that one. But hopefully you can get a similar happiness I get from feeding the horses and feeding the monks, and maybe even a bit more. Because hopefully the monks are practicing the Dhamma a bit more diligent than horses. But you can try it out. What does it feel like to be a good person, to be kind, to be generous? And similarly, try it out. What does it feel like if you have anxiety and then you take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha? And then you commit yourself to the 5 precepts. This is not to steal, not to commit sensual misconduct like adultery, not to lie, and not to take alcohol or any other drugs that cause intoxication, carelessness, lack of mindfulness, and that erode the sense of shame and conscience. But one commits to make a real effort in abstaining from that. And even if you're not perfect yet, and we sometimes may get carried away, now you can still renew that commitment and just try better next time around. So my suggestion is try it out. We also have it on the YouTube. I just recently published a new version, reasonably nice sounding, because we had many people here for the last full moon practice day, the Sunday closest to the full moon, where we are doing the 5 and 8 precepts and the triple refuge at 9 a.m. on that Sunday. And with the many people there, it sounded quite sonorous, and I make some major effort trying to edit that as good as I can, that it sounds nice. So you don't even have to come here to try it out. You can go to our podcast, there's even a Spotify, and just go through that. Bowing, it's good to at least light some candles and some incense, or at least just light one on the podcast, join in. And see how it affects your anxiety. And if you take refuge in the Supreme Being in the whole universe, because that's what the Buddha is, there's no equal, there's no counterpart. There's no one except for other Buddhas who can equal or exceed the Buddha in terms of wisdom. There's no one who can exceed the Buddha in terms of knowledge, understanding, insight, purity, freedom, release, samadhi, psychic powers. And you're connecting with that. Now, how would you feel if you are a personal body of the Prime Minister or the President of the US or something like that? Would that probably allay your anxiety to some extent? Or if you have friends who are whatever martial artists and really strong, or the president of the police force, you would immediately feel more secure that you have such powerful friends. Compared to the Buddha, this is nothing. First stage. And now you're a follower of that. Now your anxiety will be reduced. And we can repeat that. You could do this ceremony every day. Every morning, every evening. You could do it twice a day. If you do a morning chanting, evening chanting, and a Buddha puja, morning, evening, include the ceremony of taking triple refuge and precepts. And see how you go after 1 month and what your anxiety is doing. Whether it increases or decreases. That is something we can investigate for ourselves. It seems people have a strong need to have something that they can admire. And myself growing up in a rather non-religious atheist society, which Germany already was when I was born, you can notice that people, when they don't have any religion or any spiritual ideals they can take refuge in, they have something else that they kind of enshrine and put up. In Australia, I think it's often sports stars. This is the big thing. And then people have a poster of a sports stars. That's a really big one already when I was young. And the people would have some favorite band or singer and would have their photos and collections, and they would kind of worship them. Probably number one now is Taylor, no? Is anyone else as famous as Taylor Swift? No. And people have her stuff everywhere. So you can see that now that we seem to have that internal need. And the Buddha actually said that himself. Even after he attained enlightenment, Sammasambodhi, full awakening under the Bodhi tree, the thought occurred to him, someone who has nothing to respect and revere and worship, that person lives in misery. It's quite fascinating. Some people think to have nothing above you, so to speak, is actually would be great. What the Buddha said, if you have nothing to look up to respect and revere, this is actually an unpleasant state of suffering. And to have something that is actually worthy of veneration and respect and reverence and worship, that actually gives us happiness. You feel happy to have something admirable and to express your respect and reverence for that. And then the Buddha investigated with his psychic powers, and he found that unfortunately there's not a single being in the whole universe who is this superior in wisdom and insight and samadhi and peace and calm and compassion and all these wholesome qualities. So it wouldn't really be appropriate for him to respect and revere someone who is actually inferior in all these wholesome qualities. But because he felt it is so important to have something to look up to and to revere, he decided that he would respect and revere the Dhamma, the very Dhamma he has discovered, the Dhamma of deathlessness, of freedom, liberation, end of suffering. And this is what he continued doing. So if we have nothing to really respect and to take refuge in, that is actually a state which can make us depressed. And not surprisingly, I think after anxiety, the second most common mental disorder, I believe, is depression. And of course, there's a fluid dividing line between what you call a medical condition, major depressive disorder, clinical depression, and what you would call just having the blues or feeling down or feeling depressed. There will be many people who wouldn't qualify as a disorder, but they still suffer from feeling unhappy. The same with anxiety. Even if you're not qualifying for anxiety disorder, you may still suffer from fears. And again, I believe one reason that this is so common is that people have nothing to really respect and revere and worship and take refuge in. So my second suggestion, if you feel a little bit, is to practice the precepts and see whether that has some effect on your feeling of happiness or misery. Of course, we can't expect a miracle from just doing this ritual once. That doesn't mean that, particularly if you have clinical depression, that is immediately gone. It doesn't work that quickly. Because once you take refuge, it's nice to start it off with a little bit of a puja and some chanting of the qualities of the Buddha. because we want to understand what we are doing there. And if we are recollecting the unique qualities of the Buddha, the unique qualities of the Dhamma, and the unique qualities of the Sangha, before we take refuge, then our understanding is deeper, and then our act of taking refuge is more profound, has a bigger impact on the mind. It's also good karma. I think that's another reason that depression is so rampant in our society, because people are lacking good karma. As mentioned before, the Buddha pointed out, good karma, punya, is a synonym for happiness. Of course, that also means that a lack of good karma is a synonym. Each time when you commit yourself to the precepts, that is even more good karma than giving big donations to charity. If it is really, really meant, if we really mean it when we take refuge, is an act of good karma. Every time we bow to the Buddha is an act of good karma. It's so good to have something where you actually feel you want to bow for that. Admittedly, there's not that much in this world where we would feel maybe bowing, but Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, now I feel this is actually, I feel like bowing to that. It's so special. And each time you bow, your heart gets uplifted. You lower the body, but the mind gets uplifted. And each time you bow to something deserving reverence, you make good karma. Now, there's no Dhamma, no teaching, no state in our heart that could be realized that is superior to the Buddha Dhamma. Well, the best thing you ever can experience is exactly the Dhamma, the state of Sambodhi enlightenment, what the Buddha has experienced and what countless disciples of the Buddha have experienced since. There's nothing in the whole universe, there's no experience that would compare or exceed or be the equal. Of all groups, corporations, associations, communities, organizations, there's none that is superior or could equal than the community of the enlightened disciples of the Buddha. So you are committing to the highest community in the universe, the supreme community in the universe. You're committing to the supreme Dhamma, the supreme teaching, and the supreme state that can be realized in one's heart. And you're committing to the supreme being. How could you not feel happy in doing that? And how could you not make good karma? You make lots of good karma each time you do that. So I recommend just trying it out, going for refuge to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, committing to the 5 precepts and see what it does for anxiety. And I feel confident if you do that wholeheartedly, repeatedly, and you make an effort keeping these precepts, the anxiety will go down. Same with depression, if you feel down. And do that regularly, every day. And do it like you really mean it. Taking refuge, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and committing to make a real effort in keeping the precepts. And I'm confident depression will come down, you will have more happiness. Actually already right in the ceremony, even just conducting the ceremony, although I usually try to imagine that I also take refuge while I'm doing that, but even just conducting it, I find it often very uplifting. And being able to support and assist others doing that, this actually feels really great, and it's good karma. check out now how good it feels to make good karma. Check out and switch on the mindfulness faculty, switch on sati. The next time you do retail therapy, this is one way how people try to deal with anxiety and depression and meaninglessness. But now what does it really feel like to do retail therapy? Have you heard that term? Us going shopping to make yourself happy? Retail therapy, yeah, retail therapy. You may get a little kick there, and then you come back with all the designer bags and the stuff in there. But it doesn't feel so good once you check your credit card balance. And once you put all the things in your cupboards, then the kind of elated state is gone. Whereas each time you take refuge, and it builds up, gets stronger. So a great way, it doesn't cost you anything. It's quite easy to do externally. The effort is only mentally that we really understand or at least some of the qualities of the Buddha, so that the taking refuge is genuine. And we'll be making good karma every time you do that. Another one is meaninglessness. I can still remember before becoming a Buddhist, so to speak, encountering the Dhamma. Now, often having this feeling as a teenager, even when I studied, it seems to be, what is the point of it all? Living in this world and having to make a living, maybe getting married, job, and so on, and then you live, and then getting old, retiring, nursing home, getting sick, dying, funeral. It's not really convincing. There must be something better than just that. Or you're satisfied with that. Even in the best possible case, you are performing excellent in school, you get into a good uni, you get honors degrees and PhD or whatnot, then you get a dream job, you find a dream partner, you have got kids who are child prodigies, your career goes through the roof. And still then one day and then the kids are performing excellent as well. Even then, one day you have to retire, if you live that long. Then you get older, you get sicker, and then the coffin is at the end still, and then it's all over. And I can understand that people feel depressed or anxious if that is all they have. But what the Buddha offers, what the Dhamma offers, what the Sangha offers is going beyond that. And achieving or getting, realizing something that even defeats death. That is the ultimate anxiety, and that is the ultimate depressor, the death. And what the Buddha has found, that is even beyond death. It frees you literally from having to die. It frees you from sickness, it frees you from all pain, disappointment. You can, at least having that option and being aware of that option and having something that is so meaningful. Not just living a life, not to somehow having to go to work and make a living somehow. And struggling on until one day death gets us. But actually to have something profoundly meaningful. So that everything makes sense, that there's a purpose to life, namely realizing that state. Now this is such a huge difference, and makes such a big difference to your feeling, general feeling in life.